The topic of lost media is all the rage these days. But while everyone and their brother searches for well-known pieces like Saki Sanabashi, Slamfest 99, and old episodes of Doctor Who, there are hundreds, if not thousands of pieces that no one is looking for. These are those pieces. This is lesser-known lost media.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It is I, your host, Mr. Sean, here today with a very special edition of Lesser Known Lost Media. In fact, this is volume 33, so thank you for helping make all of these editions possible. But today it's a very special and a little different than how we normally do this series. See, normally what we do is we do 4 pieces of normal lost media, have a brief ad break, and then we would do a 5th and slightly spicier piece to end off the video. But with this, we are doing an entire episode about the lost media regarding Carl Barks and his work on the Donald Duck and Scrooge McDuck Disney comics of the 1940s and 60s. While researching material for an upcoming volume, I came across this article in the Lost Media Wiki, and it's a very long one, and I feel like to do it justice, I should dedicate an entire episode to it, not just a segment. I also wanted to remind all of you that if you go over to the community tab on the channel, we are currently doing miniature giveaway to celebrate 600 followers. I am giving away 2 of my spicy minis, both X-Men characters. One is Magic, one is Clarice Ferguson, aka Blink, and what you need to do is you need to go to that community tab, you need to comment Uncanny in the comments, and then you will be entered to win. 2 winners will be selected, and each will receive one of the 2 minis. And you are able to enter that up until noon Eastern Standard Time, Saturday the 20th. So please go do that, and without further ado, let's get into Volume 33, the special Carl Barks, Donald Duck, and Scrooge McDuck edition of Lesser Known Lost Media. So Carl Barks, who was born March 27th of 1901 and died August 25th of 2000, was an American cartoonist best known for his work in Walt Disney comic books. Just like all cartoonists who worked under Disney's contract, his name was not known for a long time. His style was, however, widely recognized as he was identified as the Good Duck Artist, a nickname he received once he came out of anonymity. He was the creator of many important characters who are still used today in Disney comics, such as Uncle Scrooge, the Beagle Boys, the Junior Woodchucks, Magica De Spell, and Gladstone Gander. Barks retired in 1966, but he continued working on scripts and writing stories until 1974, but lived long enough to become popular and see his art being recognized. He wrote his final Uncle Scrooge story in 1994. So, from 1942 to 1994, Barks produced approximately 693 stories. While most of these stories went on untouched, there were some that were changed by the company for one reason or another, and 4 stories were completely shelved. 2 of the missing stories, Silent Night, which was story number 42, written in 1946, and The Milkman, which was story number 376, written in 1957, have resurfaced and later been published for the first time in 1976 and 1974, respectively. Later editions have been able to retrieve and re-edit back some of the changes, but some of Barks' comics and the art that was originally cut remain lost to this day, and most of it was probably destroyed or junked. So now that we have a bit of backstory on Barks and his work, let's get into the specific pieces that were lost or changed. Our first instance of lost media is Lifeguard Days original art. So Carl Barks' official story number 5, originally untitled but identified by fans as Lifeguard Days, was submitted January 29th of 1943 and was published in June that same year in Walt Disney Comics and Stories number 33. In this story, Donald Duck is a lifeguard who is trying to impress a young lady. He convinces Huey, Dewey, and Louie to prepare a fake shark in order to stage a rescue. But in the meantime, a real shark attacks. So the executives thought that the lady that Donald was trying to impress had too large of a chest, so they had Barks flatten it out. In the last page, this can be clearly seen in the scene in which the lady kisses Donald, and as we can see here from the image, there is a large unnatural gap between them. As Barks had to do the redrawing on the original papers, the original version is lost forever. Because apparently those Lady Duck bazongas were just too darn sexy for audiences back in the 40s, guys. Next up, we have the story The Firebug original ending. So, Donald Duck the Firebug is Barks' official story number 46. Its submission date was July 19th of 1945, and it was first published in One Shots number 108 in 1946. In this story, Donald becomes a pyromaniac after receiving a shock from a violent hit in the head. Meanwhile, fires start around the city, and his nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie try to find out if Uncle Donald is really causing them or if it is someone else. Eventually, it is discovered that the fires are not caused by Donald, and the real Firebug gets arrested and processed. In Barks' original story, Donald, still under the influence of the head concussion, set fire to the judge's waste paper. The fire extends and burns out the court, so Donald gets arrested and goes to jail. Editors objected to this ending, particularly because on the last panel, Donald was seen looking behind jail bars, so they had artist Carl Butner redraw the last two panels so that in the new version, everything was revealed to have been just a bad dream. The original art has never surfaced, and all the information about it came from interviews with Barks himself. This one surprises me because being a 90s kid, it feels like Donald ended up in jail all the time in cartoons, but maybe I'm just misremembering that, or maybe it's the Mandela effect. Sorry for any audio quality issues, there's a lot of wind outside and I've got a bit of a cough this morning, so I'm just going to try and power through it, guys. Thank you for understanding. So our next piece of lost media is the Golden Christmas Tree original version. Donald Duck, The Golden Christmas Tree is Barks' official story number 104. Its submission date was June 30th, 1948, and it was published in One Shots number 203 that same year. In this story, Donald and his nephews are looking for a nice tree for Christmas, but a bad witch casts a spell that makes all Christmas trees disappear. Donald and his nephews engage in a fight with the witch in order to save the Christmas spirit. The story was originally conceived by Barks as a satire of Christmas commercialism, but as soon as the editors read the finished product, they asked him to change parts of it. In the original ending, Donald killed the witch permanently, but the editors feared that this was too extreme for a comic book, even though this was the time when I'm pretty sure Batman shot all of his enemies at the end of every comic. So instead, Barks had the witch transform into a can of gasoline and Donald kick her over the cliff of a mountain. Once Barks made the changes, the editors objected to other things as well and changed the dialogue of the last page. In later interviews, Barks said that while he thought the story idea was strong enough, the changes he had to make weakened it and that he still gagged when he read the last page. Barks' original script is missing, and additionally, the dialogue was probably changed on the original papers as well. Barks was later asked if he remembered what was the original dialogue, but he claims he doesn't remember. I think this one was on him, guys. I mean, he thought Disney would be okay with an anti-commercialism message, really? Come on, you know better than that, Barksy. Our next piece is Voodoo Hoodoo original version. So Donald Duck Voodoo Hoodoo is Barks' official story number 122. Its submission date was the 3rd of March 1949, and it first appeared in One Shots number 238 later that same year. In this story, Donald is pursued by a zombie who gives him a voodoo doll that curses him, a curse which was actually intended for Uncle Scrooge. Regarded as one of Barks' creepiest stories, it did have some problems before its release. The editors decided to tone down the dialogue a bit, the word dead being replaced by done for, to remove some native dialect, and most importantly, the zombie originally had blank eyeballs, which were changed because the Disney staff feared that it would have been too scary for children. When artist Don Rosa reprised the character for Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, however, he drew him with blank eyes. Not only is the original version long lost, but some later reprints added other changes as well in the design of the natives and minor characters, such as a trumpet player in the first page, in order to make the story less politically incorrect / culturally insensitive. Fortunately, however, this original version is not lost. It is merely not anymore published, as the original comic books and early translations in other countries still exist. So it's not lost, guys, it's just hard to find, but it is out there. Up next, we have Golden Apples. Donald Duck Golden Apples is Barks' official story, number 189. Its submission date was January 10th of 1952, and it was planned to be published in Walt Disney's Comics and Stories, number 144, in September of 1952. The story was a parody of the myth of Atlanta and the Golden Apples, except involving Daisy Duck and Donald Duck. The editors complained about this story because they felt that Daisy Duck's attitude towards Donald wasn't feminine enough, and there was a running gag of her throwing apples at Donald whenever he tried to impress another woman. The story was thus shelved and put into the archives, and Barks' untitled story, identified by fans as Spending Money, which was planned for issue 145, was published instead. Unfortunately, today this story is lost and nobody seems to know what happened to it. When asked about it, Barks said that the only thing that he remembered was Daisy throwing apples at Donald, and that it was set on a Queen of Apple festival. Many attempts have been made to find this missing story, but as of 2017, it remains lost. Danish cartoonist Don Jeeps attempted a recreation in 2007, which was first published in the US in 2008 by Uncle Scrooge number 377. Again, this one confuses me because I distinctly remember even in older cartoons, women getting jealous of their men in the cartoons. Minnie getting jealous of Mickey, Daisy getting jealous of Donald, all that, so I don't know what the big deal is for this one. But apparently, ladies, you're not supposed to throw golden apples at your men, so sorry. Up next, we have Trick or Treat, Still Missing Material. Donald Duck Trick or Treat is Barks' official story 198. Its submission date was March 31st of 1952, and it was published in Donald Duck number 26 in November of 1952. In this story, set in Halloween, Huey, Dewey, and Louie are collecting candy. Donald decides to tease them and tells them that the spirits and witches do not exist. Hazel the Witch helps his nephews to prove him wrong. I'm pretty sure this one was also a cartoon, which if you've ever watched like The Magic Mirror Presents Disney's Spooky Halloween, which I remember as a staple of my childhood, I'm pretty sure this story was a cartoon in that. Based on a storyboard by cartoonist Jack Hanna, this story was originally commissioned by Disney staff to Barks, but instead of following the storyboard closely, he added some gags on his own because according to him, the storyboard didn't have enough material to create a full-length story. The final result was 32 pages, however, most of the changes were deemed as too creepy and were discarded by the editors. Trick or Treat premiered in November of 1952 as a 23-page story. Having learned of the discarded material's existence, late editors tried to search for the cut pages. In 1978, a short sequence was recovered and a partial reconstruction was published in the Netherlands in Donald Duck number 8, number 9, and number 10. After more research, most of the missing material turned up, and was first released in Italy in 1980 in Complete Carl Barks number 33. The reconstruction premiered in the US on the Carl Barks Library of Donald Duck Adventures in color, number 21, in September of 1995. However, while most of the story was recovered, some of the missing sequences have not yet been found. Next we have Back to the Klondike, Still Missing Material. This is our first Uncle Scrooge entry of the episode. So Uncle Scrooge, Back to the Klondike, is Barks' official story number 205. Its submission date was September 15th of 1952, and it was published in One Shots number 456/Uncle Scrooge number 2 in March of 1953. In this story, Uncle Scrooge's memory keeps failing, so he starts taking pills to remedy this condition. Because taking pills is fine for the kiddos, but can't let them see a girl throwing apples at people, right guys? But anyway, as he takes the pills, he suddenly remembers something that happened a while ago in the Klondike. He then goes there in order to recover a debt with his old flame, Glittering Goldie. However, it seems that Scrooge still has a soft spot for her. Often regarded by fans as one of Barks' best stories, this was another one that was severely cut by the editors before being allowed publication. Because apparently this guy just can't catch a break, right? Barks originally submitted 32 pages, but after surgery, they were reduced to 27. The sequences that Disney objected to were flashbacks in which Goldie drugs Scrooge's coffee in order to steal his goose egg gold nugget. As Scrooge realizes that his gold has been stolen, he goes back to the ballroom and starts a brawl. Scrooge demands his nugget back, so Goldie throws it to his head. Since he finds out that more gold has been stolen, he makes her write an IOU and takes her with him to make her work for a month in order to pay her debt. Goldie eventually throws the money she earned in Scrooge's face. I like the sound of this story, guys. In a later cut sequence, non-flashback, Scrooge admits that he never kept out taxes on his propriety, so he can't report Goldie to the authorities. The story was later restored for the first time in 29 years in 1981 in order to be printed on Uncle Scrooge McDuck, His Life and Times by Carl Barks #1. While most of the material was indeed found, half a page remained missing. In order to fill this blank space, Barks redrew that section from memory. To this day, the original missing half page has not been found. Most of the time, I do argue with Disney over what they cut out, but it doesn't bother me. I understand why they wouldn't want a sequence where Scrooge admits that he is a tax dodger. Especially during the height of McCarthyism. I mean, that's just pressure you don't need from the government, right? I can see it now. They would have brought Carl Barks and Disney up on charges for trying to corrupt the youth into not paying taxes and un-American activities. That would have sucked. Up next, guys, we have The Money Stairs, first ending. So, Carl Barks' official story, number 221, originally untitled but identified by fans as The Money Stairs, was submitted the 15th of January 1953 and was published in October in Walt Disney Comics and Stories number 157. In this story, Scrooge insists with Donald that money can do everything, so Donald challenges him into climbing a mountain. Scrooge ends up winning the bet by building a giant pile of stairs using all his money. In the original ending, Scrooge made fun of Donald while they went back to town, rubbing his victory into him. However, Barks wasn't quite satisfied with it. I recall looking at the panel of Uncle Scrooge's money ramp and deciding it looked too impossible to be real. He wrote to a fan in 1973, thus he cut the last 3 panels and made a new ending in which Donald wakes up, realizing that everything was just a dream when Scrooge wanted to offer him a drink with a dime that was left from the stairs. All that survives from the first ending is one panel. The other 2 have been lost. So this one was lost by Barks himself. This had nothing to do with the editors, he just wasn't happy with the original ending. And that I can respect. If you're not happy with your own work, you can change it. Next up, this is about the halfway point of our entries, we have Dogcatcher Duck, original version. Carl Barks' official story number 291, originally untitled but identified by fans as Dogcatcher Duck, was submitted October 7th, 1954, and was published in January of 1956 in Donald Duck number 45. In this story, Donald is a dog catcher, but he does his job very unsuccessfully, often causing trouble. Interrupting a fox hunt is the straw that breaks the camel's back, so he ends up escaping from Duckberg. Barks originally submitted this story as 8 pages. When it was finally published, the editors cut parts of the story in order to fit an announcement. They also reversed some panels on page 5. Removing parts of the story created a plot hole on page 4. Donald says that the police department is mad at him, but we don't see why in the final story. Barks was none too pleased with this and referred to the end result as a bad, jumbled mess. Unfortunately, the original version, as written by Barks, has never surfaced, although reconstruction efforts have been able to put the panels on page 5 in the right order. The editors are just come across as just the worst in this episode, don't they, guys? Alright guys, since we're at about the halfway point of the entries for this video, I thought I'd take a quick break to remind you about my business, Chimera Miniatures. Of course, as you may know, this channel was started as a way for me to talk about my custom miniatures that I make, both the spicy repaints like I'm giving away over on my community page of this channel, please go check it out, please enter, as well as custom kit bashes, one-of-a-kind miniatures that you won't find anywhere else, both for HeroClix as well as Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop games. Also, in regards to the business and this channel, our goal for this year is 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. And so if you want to help make that happen, be sure to like, be sure to comment, be sure to subscribe, and also share this video around. Help the YouTube algorithm determine that this channel is worth recommending. I also have a Patreon if you'd like to join over there. But again, the best thing you can do to help this channel grow is like, subscribe, comment, and maybe even become a YouTube channel member. I do have exclusive member and Patreon only videos that I post a couple of times a month. Even if you just join the $1 tier on either here or Patreon, you will gain access to all of those videos. Again, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for helping me get all the way to 600 subscribers. When I started this channel, I did 2 years ago, I did not realize that I didn't even have a dream of getting this far. But now I'm really happy to say I think we can do it. I think we can keep growing. And, your support is what makes that happen. So again, thank you so much. And I've taken up enough of your time. Let's get back to the video. Up next, we have Land Beneath the Ground, original uncut version. Uncle Scrooge, Land Beneath the Ground is Barks' official story number 298. It was submitted on August 15th, 1956, and was published in Uncle Scrooge number 13 in March of 1957. In this story, Duckberg is constantly stricken by earthquakes, so Scrooge, along with his nephews, investigate. They discover an underground cave in which live strange creatures named Terrys and Fermies, who are responsible for the earthquakes. Western Publishing had applied to the post office for second-class mailing privileges for the Uncle Scrooge series, and postal rules required the magazine featuring at least 2 stories with different characters as stars. Because of this, Barks started producing Gyro Gear Loose stories, but this also meant that he had to cut this story in order to fit space in the magazine. The cuts were made by Barks himself, who also tightened the story a little bit. After all the cleaning had been made, the story was reduced from 32 pages to 27, in order to replace some panels in order to bring consistency to this now 27 pages story. Barks drew new panels, notably featuring a 1-mile-length lake in which Duck, Donald, and Scrooge fall. Most of the original cut pages have been found, with only 1 page and a half still missing. However, the redrawn panels are very difficult to find today because new copybooks always feature the fixed 30 pages and a half version. Alright guys, now we have Trapped Lightning, the Huey, Dewey, and Louie version. Carl Barks' official story number 299, originally untitled but identified by fans as Trapped Lightning and featuring Gyro Gear Loose, was submitted the 1st of September of 1955 and was published in Uncle Scrooge 13 in March of 1956. During a storm, Gyro catches lightning in order to use its electricity. Things do not go as well as planned. Originally, Donald's nephews were helping Gyro in the experiment, but because of the aforementioned postal rules, he had to remove them as they were already featured in the previous story. So he replaced them with Morty and Ferdy, Mickey Mouse's nephews. Now that's a deep cut. This was the only time he used the characters, and Barks actually only did 1 Mickey Mouse story during his career. The original Huey, Dewey, and Louie version have never surfaced, because Barks glued the new drawings of Morty and Ferdy on the original panels with the ducks. I'll be completely honest, I had completely forgotten that Morty and Ferdy even existed, so that's kinda cool. Alright, next up guys, we have Inventor of Anything, the Donald Duck version. Carl Barks' official story number 307, originally untitled but identified by fans as Inventor of Anything and featuring Gyro Gear Loose, was submitted on October 1st, 1955 and published in Uncle Scrooge number 14 in June of 1956. I'm going to give you one guess as to why this one became lost. In this story, Gyro is tired of the misbehavior of his neighbors, so he builds an instant wall which separates him from them. Unfortunately, the wall is slightly on the neighbor's property, so he has to find a solution. Originally, Donald Duck appeared as co-protagonist, but because of the aforementioned postal rules, he was replaced with a character named Speedy, who had similar clothes, body figure, temper, and car. He also mentions racing against Gladstone Gander, who is Donald's rival in love and success. The Speedy character never appeared again, and the original version has never surfaced. I find it really interesting that this rule from the post office back then was that it wasn't just that you had to have a different protagonist, but there couldn't be overlapping characters. I mean, all of these characters exist in Duckberg, so you'd think that, like, as long as it was like one was an Uncle Scrooge one, and one was a Donald Duck one, or one was a Gyro one, and one was a Huey, Dewey, and Louie one, like, if there were background characters or co-characters, like supporting characters, it wouldn't matter, but apparently it had to be two completely separate stories with no overlapping characters, which I think is just very interesting. Alright guys, next up we have Sled Race. Donald Duck Sled Race is Barks' official story, number 328. Its submission date was the 15th of December 1955, and it was planned to be published in Walt Disney's Comics and Stories, number 196, on January of 1957. The story depicted a bobsled race between Donald and his nephews. In a letter from June 4th, 1956, editor Alice Cobb asked Barks to tone down a bit of the conflict between the ducks. This was because a mother had complained about Donald telling his nephews to shut up in the final panel of the untitled story identified as The Ice Taxi, published in Walt Disney's Comics and Stories, number 186, on March of 1956. This is likely the reason for which this story was shelved. Barks never gave more information about what happened in the story, and while there have been many attempts to track it down, it remains unfound to this day. Now, there is a theory that Barks reworked parts of this story in what is identified by the fans as Statues of Limitations, the story that got published in place of Bobsled Race, but this has never been confirmed. Next up, guys, we have the Madcap Mariner cut page. Donald Duck, the Madcap Mariner, is Barks' official story, number 521. It was submitted July 11th, 1960, and was published in Walt Disney Comics and Stories, number 247, in April of 1961. I just want to take a second, guy. This is story number 521. This guy wrote so many stories, and until after his retirement, his name hadn't appeared on the pages of his Walt Disney comics because of their contract rules. And whatever you think of Disney now, whether you think they're great, whether you think they're awful, what I think is great is that now, because of laws and legislation put in, artists and writers like Barks have to be given credit for their work, which is really important because it's, this was his work. He's known as the good duck artist. So I think it was absolutely awful that he did not receive the credit he was due while he was coming out with these stories that delighted people for decades. But I'm glad he's gotten his credit now, even if it was after the fact and probably only due to Disney being forced to, acknowledge his work. I just wanted to say that I think it's great that he's finally known, but shame on Disney and other companies back in the day for not giving their artists their due. So anyway, back to the Madcap Mariner. In this story, Scrooge wants to win a cod fishing competition, so he gives Donald, his nephews, and Gyro a ship in order to fill the hold. The original story had 10 pages, but one was cut by the editors in order to make room for an advertisement. Barks was reportedly enraged by the cut because he felt they took away the best gag. Unfortunately, the missing page has never surfaced, and Barks has never described what this best gag consisted of. Alright guys, next up we have Stranger Than Fiction cut material. Donald Duck, Stranger Than Fiction, is Barks' official story number 530. It was submitted on the 31st of October of 1960 and was published in Walt Disney's Comics and Stories number 249 in June of 1961. In this story, Donald doesn't like his nephew's enthusiasm for science fiction, but then discovers that Gyro has built a machine for teleportation, which is based on one described in the science fiction magazine Huey, Dewey, and Louie were reading. Donald tries to teleport from Gyro's laboratory to his house, but the electricity fails and he gets stuck in the machine. The original story had 10 pages, but once again, the material was cut by the editors in order to make room for an advertisement. Barks never commented on what material was cut from the story. Up next, we have Mythic Mystery cut material. Give you one guess as to why that material was cut, but let's see. Uncle Scrooge Mythic Mystery is Barks' official story number 531. It was submitted on the 12th of October of 1960 and was published in Uncle Scrooge number 34 in June of 1961. In this story, a storm drags Uncle Scrooge and his nephews into a small planet which is getting closer to the Earth. People living on the planet look like ancient Greek gods, but are actually Earthlings who got dragged onto the planet centuries ago. Barks' original story had 16 pages, but Western cut some material in order to make room for different advertisements. There you go. They removed a number of panels that shortened the story to 14 pages. Barks' reaction was very bitter. In a 1961 letter to a fan, he wrote that his chin hit my knees when I saw that big half-page stupender I did of Thor and Vulcan and a nephew riding above the busiest street corner in Duckberg in the Golden Chariot was missing. Thor's horses terrified thousands, at least, of people, gaping upward in disbelief. Otto's bumper-to-bumper smoking clanking. In short, I gave Vulcan something to be scared about. All wasted effort. Unfortunately, the missing art was never found. Alright guys, and finally we have Rug Riders in the Sky cut material. Uncle Scrooge Rug Riders in the Sky is Barks' official story number 620. Wow. It was submitted on the 26th of December for 1963 and was published in Uncle Scrooge number 50 in July of 1964. Magica De Spell discovers a flying rug in Baghdad, but since she can't afford it, she makes Scrooge buy it with the intention of stealing it afterwards. Originally, the story had 17 pages, but the editors removed one to make room for advertisements. On March 25th of 1989, hey, that was my one-year birthday, notes for the Carl Barks Library, Barks gave a description of the missing material as a gag sequence of the ducks chasing east after Magica, who runs out of fuel and has to land the carpet in the desert. That would have been on page 13. No doubt readers got more pleasure from the Bullwinkle Cheerios ad that was made possible by scrapping of that page. Once again, the missing material has never been recovered. And that's all the entries we have for this video, guys. I think this one was a really cool one. I haven't read a lot of Donald or Scrooge comics, but I am a big fan of DuckTales, specifically the relaunch of the show a couple years back, and I loved seeing how a lot of elements and characters from Barks' work actually did end up making it into episodes of that show. While I do have some nostalgia for the original DuckTales show, specifically the movie, The Legend of the Lost Lamp, it's very much a product of its time and made for kids, and I feel like the newest iteration of DuckTales really was made for fans of the Disney characters themselves who grew up with them, especially considering that show is clearly made for an older audience. And some of the big things that come up again in that: Magica De Spell, major antagonist, the Junior Woodchucks, Gyro Gearloose, all of this. So much of it stems from this man, Carl Banks, and I didn't even know that up until this episode. So thank you, Carl, for basically shaping some of my favorite aspects of Disney canon. While some of this material went lost because Carl himself wasn't happy with it, in the end, most of this lost media is due to the editors of Western Publishing having their own ideas about what was good for the stories. And, I get it. They got a job to do. They got to make the company money, but, that's tale as old as time, editors getting in the way of the artist's vision. And while we are still missing select bits and pieces of his work, I am glad that we have Carl's work and that we can enjoy it and let it shape the future of the Donald Duck, DuckTales, Uncle Scrooge. All of the whole Duckberg mythos is forever better because of the work of this man. And I think we can all agree that while we may never find some of these missing things, they would have been absolutely fantastic. So guys, if you liked this video, please be sure to leave that comment and click that like button. Two very simple things for you, but they mean everything to me and to the algorithm. So please do that. If you have not subscribed, please do so. I make at least 2 videos a week, sometimes 3. Typically there will be one of these lost media videos and then another random video, just whatever I feel like making, and maybe there'll even be a third, like a creepypasta or something. But I do try to consistently put out content for you to enjoy. So please do your part, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're feeling really generous, maybe become a channel member, become a Patreon member, or just check my links to eBay and Mercari and consider buying a mini. And on that, please head over to the community page of this channel. Please type the word uncanny, the phrase uncanny, into the post that is the contest announcement post to be entered to win. Of course, I will pick 2 winners on Saturday the 20th, so be sure to be a part of that. Get yourself some minis absolutely free of cost. It costs you nothing to enter and nothing if you win. I will mail it to you. I will cover the shipping costs as a way to say thank you for watching. And so guys, until our next video, I'm Mr. Sean, this is Chimera Miniatures, and I sincerely hope that you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye!